Michael when he was running the Heritage Cinema Playhouse. He was trying to essentially put black movies in town, right on North Avenue, right as you're heading this way. And it was definitely a success, but it was also, I know, financially a burden, Michael. It was not easy to operate something like that. But what he did was significant. So significant that one of the things I remember, and I look back at this, you were a mentor for me, brother. I ended up, while still working at WJZ, going to film school. And then I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I'm just telling you, people who mentor you don't always know that they're your mentors, right? You feel me? And so, in that way, I ended up going to American University and getting my film degree on the weekends, every Saturday, in class for like 8 hours a day. And it was the most phenomenal experience of my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I truly enjoyed it, so thank you. I appreciate you, and thank you for having me out here. I was talking to Aaron at the table, and I said to him today, my remarks are really about who's telling your story. I look out in this audience, and I see the honorees. So many of you I know. Rosa Pryor, oh my God. Known this woman for years. Ramblin' Rose, she is a griot in our community. You hear me? Not me. I've been here, this is my 30th year in Baltimore, and I'm honored to be here. I love this city. I tell my wife, though, my wife, like our esteemed Bob Wallace here, grew up in Cherry Hill, right? So my wife gives me my Baltimore street cred. I say that all the time. Y'all feel me, you hear me, right? My wife gives me my Baltimore street cred. Like, Cal, you don't... My wife grew up in Cherry Hill. Oh, okay. You good. You okay, Cal? Yeah, I know. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I love Baltimore, and I want to pull the last few hairs out of my head sometimes with this city. At times, it's just things that are frustrating to me. When I see the potential that we have, and as a friend of mine says, sometimes we can't get out of our own way, right? But that's why you all are here today. So my message to you is, who's telling our story? Who's telling your story? Is it people like Ramblin' Rose telling it? Is it Aaron through his art program working with young people? Is it Cameron Miles, who I've known for years and have worked with Cameron, mentoring teen males in the hood? This brother is doing phenomenal work. And work, quite honestly, that stations like mine don't put on often enough. I'm not going to say they never do it, because that's not true, but it's not enough. But we have to stop going to other people asking them to do for us what we need to be doing for ourselves.
Right. Mama may have.
Now, that's not to say, so Kai, we can't call you with a story. Absolutely, I want you to. But what I'm saying is that leadership, that initiative, that ingenuity, that starts in the ground up, right? It's the ground up. There's no, and we're saying this, there's no trickle down. It's, a tree doesn't grow from the sky up, right? The roots are planted. They spread in the ground for stability, and it grows up. That's how it works. So who's telling a message? Who's saying? Is it people like Brother Bilal, another honoree, who's doing phenomenal work in the city of Baltimore? I wanted to look up some stats. So I said, how many journalists are there who are black in America? So I'm a journalist and also a filmmaker. And so the number I came up with, and I'm not sure how accurate this information is, but it's roughly 12,000. It seems a little low to me, but it's probably fairly accurate. Of that number, of 12,000, I'm sorry, journalists total, 6% are black, so they're saying that's about 720. But again, I think if you separated that in terms of print, or what we call print today, which will be online, versus broadcasting, then maybe that number is there. I'm a part of an organization called the National Association of Black Journalists. I've been with that group since '91, almost since I started as a journalist. We advocate for not only journalists of color in America to be in newsrooms, to be behind the scenes, but we also advocate for the diaspora as well. What's happening on the continent of Africa, the countries, what's happening there as well. But if I look at the numbers on service value, it's like, wow, they're really, even in 2023, there aren't enough of us telling our own story. That's my takeaway. And while I think it's important to have a Kai Jackson or a Tim Williams in the position that we're in, he's my best friend, by the way, over Jay-Z, I think it's equally important to have someone behind the scenes, because those people, whether they're managers, whether they're producers, often kind of dictate what gets covered, right? So that's critically important. Edwin Abin asked a moment ago, my fraternity brother, where's Edwin at? Edwin. What's happening with black boys? And he talked about illiteracy in Baltimore. Now, I'm going to share a story with you that my wife shared with me. Her grandmother passed away in 2015, Ann Roach. Ann was one of the Baltimore women who raised a family of 3 boys. 2 of them were gone now. My wife's father, who just passed away in December, and Ann herself passed away in 2015. She didn't know how to read. Born and raised in Baltimore, she couldn't read. My wife, her granddaughter, taught her how to read. Both my wife and I majored in English. My wife went to Morgan State University, and I went to another HBCU. That's right, Morgan State. Anyone ever heard of South? Okay, well, you all settle down, Morgan. Settle down. Don't get it twisted here. I'm repping South Carolina State College. Now South Carolina State University. We have any Southerners in the house today? Got some Southerners? Yes, sir.
You ain't got enough.
That's right. HBCUs all day, baby. You know it. And MEAC, Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference. Aaron knows about that, right, Aaron? All right. But Edwin asked, what's happening to black boys? Part of what I've seen in the years I've been in Baltimore is that there is a frightening percentage of our folk who don't know how to read. Now imagine that. You're like, well, you can always go get a GED program, and I worked with Baltimore Reads. It's now defunct, but it was a group trying to help people learn how to read. It was a literacy group, and I was on the board for a period of time. Again, not to pat myself on the back, but just saying I was trying to be a part of some organizations trying to move the needle, change things. But what you find is you can't fill out a job application. You can't read a prescription on a medicine bottle. You know how dangerous it would be to just take medicine and not understand how to read it? I'm on cholesterol medication. It could kill you if you don't know what you're doing. These are critical things that we have to be about. Who is telling your story? Is it me, or is it someone outside of your community? That's critically important as far as I'm concerned. What I would love to see are more people like this young man right over here, who told me he just started his own TV program. Now, he's just getting it off the ground. But it's the kind of thing that can make a tremendous difference in our neighborhood and our community. Amen. This isn't about separating ourselves from anyone. It's about controlling your story. Yes, sir. And I'm going to tell you right now that black folk in this city aren't controlling their story.
Amen.
I'm telling you right now,
yes,
we are not controlling our story. And I would say to anyone, if you want to sit up here and argue with me against it, we'll have a debate about that all day. And I'll show you instance after instance of how we're not doing it. Well, how do we do that? By being here at places like this today and making sure we're supporting organizations like this. Who was it who just said, how much sense does it make to have an event like this and not have it in a black space? Right? Not have it at the Forum, where my wife used to work back in the day. What's happening to black boys? Well, if you listen to Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, what did he say? There is a conspiracy to destroy not black men,
Black families.
black boys. Because when you destroy the black boy, they never become black men. Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, years ago. Oh, Cal, you're one of these conspiracy theorists. I'm a black man who gets off the air at 6:30 at night to go get my dinner, wearing a suit and tie, and I walk down the street and someone who doesn't look like me sees me and walks to the other side of the street without making eye contact with me, clutching their purse. That's a conspiracy?
Come on. Tell the truth.
That's a conspiracy?
No.
Who's telling your story?
Yeah.
Are you telling it? Are you supporting organizations like this? Or you're the mindset of the great educator Spencer Holland, right? Everybody remember Spencer Holland? Spencer Holland wanted black boys taught only by particularly black men. It was very controversially with black women, and I'm not sure I completely agree with him, but he definitely believed black boys needed to be taught by black men at a certain age. How can we, I want you to think about this irony. How can we talk about the statistics of the number of black men in prison who can't read, who may father children and aren't taking care of those children, whatever the family dynamic is, who die early, who are involved in the drug game, the life, who are doing anything that's not positive? How can we acknowledge those stats, but then say somehow or another, they're not supposed to be involved in their children's lives and the lives of young people, teaching them and educating them? That doesn't make sense. Those two things are diametrically opposed to each other. There's a phenomenal documentary about the Atlanta killings. I think it's running on HBO. And I watched it. I haven't watched all of it. You guys remember Frank Ski? Frank Ski was even in it. He used to live here in Baltimore. So much of that I thought I knew, and I did not know at all. And I didn't know this part. I remember in, I think it was episode 1 or 2, a woman sat down and was being interviewed. You know, a couple of men said the same thing. Once it was clear something was happening with the children, a lot of the families, but particularly the men, got together and said, we need to rally in this neighborhood. We need to have a watch. We need to make sure we're watching our kids going to school, when they're out playing, just eyes and ears, right? The same things anyone would do in a neighborhood and in a community. And I never forgot this part. They started getting pushback from the local police. They're like, wait, whoa. We're going to be watching out for the kids and everything? No. We don't want vigilantes. Vigilantes? Somebody is snatching kids off streets, taking them, doing God only knows what to our children. And the fact that I'm a man who's going to watch over your kids, my kids, and the kids down the street, do you understand what that says? What you're telling, particularly the men. I'm telling you as a person in law enforcement, I'm not saying that's happening necessarily today, but I'm looking at this time in Atlanta, in this environment, you don't even have the power to protect your kids, your family. Oh, no. No. Ladies and gentlemen, black men in here, nobody will ever tell us that.
That's right.
Nobody will ever tell us. I have 2 daughters. You will never tell me I don't have the power to protect my kids. I don't know how long I'll have my kids. My kids don't know how long they'll have me. But the blessing that God has given me for them means I have a duty to look out for them. Amen. And I don't limit that to them. It would be your kids as well if you asked me to do that and if I could watch over them.
That's right.
Who's telling your story? Who is telling your story? I think one of the ways that we can tell that story better is by discussion and talking. Now, one of the stories I've been telling myself, outside of my role as a journalist at Fox 45, is the story of my karate instructor. And I'll mention his name because some of you in here probably know him. His name is Najib Amin. My karate instructor is 91 years old. He will be 92 next year. God bless him. He lost his wife in 2018, and I lost my mother the following year. He has taught more people in this city than you can imagine.
Amen.
Started out the Banneker Rec Center. Who knows Banneker? Bob, Mr. Wallace. Mr. Amin has been a wealth of knowledge for me. First of all, it's rare to see anyone live to be 91 years old. I know it happens more today, obviously the advances in medical science, right? But 91 is up there. 80 is up there. And Rose is telling me she's got a big birthday coming up, right? Right, Sister Rosa? God bless you, sister. but little things, not just what's happening. Mr. Amin tells me the stories of his health. He's a vegetarian. He initially was in the Nation of Islam years ago, got out of that once things kind of, fell apart. He was one of the first people at the Social Security Administration in Baltimore. And let me say this is one of my other stories I'm working on, one of the many ones. Michael, if I get a little long on time, just let me know. Okay. That organization helped build a black middle class in the Baltimore area, quiet as it's kept. Do not get it twisted. And the people who worked there, Mr. Amin, my late mother-in-law who worked there for 34 years, my wife's mom, her best friend who's still alive, and I got her and Mr. Amin together recently, the Social Security Administration, not the only one, but it's one of the entities that helped build a black middle class in this area. And it's one of the entities that has stabilized this city. You guys go out on North Avenue, everyone's place. Who knows everyone's place out on North Avenue? Beautiful place, right? So I go in there to get my incense, my shea butter, and my books. A stabilizing force in our city. Who is telling your story? Brown Funeral Home, I know it's right there as well, another stabilizing force. But I'm saying, who's telling your story? And I'm going to wrap up here, Michael, in just a second. Back to Mr. Amin. This is what I'm going to leave you with. About a year ago, 2 years ago, Mr. Amin and I are in the dojo in training one day, and some of these days, I tell you, it seems we do more talking than karate. And by the way, people say, "Oh, you know karate? Why didn't you tell me?" And I'll tell you what I tell people all the time. I don't tell anybody I take karate. And why wouldn't you tell them that? Because it's an invitation for me to get my behind kicked. That's the reason why. Mr. Amin said something to me. He said, "Listen to me." And he grew up in the streets of Baltimore. He said, "There's some cats out there who will pick you apart." Mr. Bates knows what I'm talking about. There's some cats out there who will dismantle you. Don't tell people you know karate. He said, sometimes the best karateka is the one who can run the fastest. It's about discipline. It's about exercise. It's about not having to use your art in any kind of violent fashion. In fact, our late founder said, if you can use your art over a lifetime and never get into a conflict, that's a great accomplishment. Mr. Amin tells me a story one day. He was stationed in France during the Korean conflict. And I'm going to wrap up, Michael. While there, he was in Verdun. He wasn't in Paris. And I said, "Mr. Amin, I'm glad you're in France, because if you were actually in Korea, I might not have ever met you." He said, "That's the truth." He used to go to a restaurant in Paris. It was called Chez Haynes. This restaurant was the first black restaurant in Paris. And my family and I, just by coincidence, happened to be blessed enough to take a trip to Paris and France this summer. A man named Leroy Haynes started this restaurant. Josephine Baker, James Baldwin, Bridget Bardot, Sarah Vaughan, all of these greats came through this restaurant. And Mr. Amin had oftentimes conversations with the late Leroy Haynes now. One day I decided to look up the Haynes name on the web because I saw his daughter wrote a blog post about the restaurant, and the blog post is over. I found her. She lives up in New York. In 2021, me and Mr. Amin got on a train and went up to New York, and we sat down with Leroy Haynes' daughter. She saw the picture of a young 21-year-old Najib Amin as a GI in his uniform. It's the only picture I've ever seen of him in his uniform. He's very militant. But we talked to her. Who's telling your story? This is one of the many stories about him I'm going to tell. Who's telling your story? Please make sure, young people, young men out here, young women, there's some young women in the audience, talk to your grandparents, talk to your parents, talk to your aunties, your uncles. The wealth of knowledge they have is amazing. That's where you start.
Amen.
You guys have more power with this than those of us who are older ever could have imagined when we were your age. This didn't exist. This didn't come into being actually as a smartphone itself. What, guys, about 07 or 08, something like that? So use the tools that you have in consultation with, with an adult if you're younger, and start telling stories. Who's telling your story? You should be the one telling it. Thank you for having me here. God bless you to each and every one of the honorees today. Michael, thank you. I love you, brother, and I love each and every one of you. Thank you.
Now, we don't, we want to tell our story right now.